Now, good afternoon, dear participants, and welcome to this briefing on the 25th October PrEP meeting that is to be convened by the President of the General Assembly of the 77th session. I am Madhu Chatterjee. I am part of the team from DESA that serves as the Secretariat for this conference for the upcoming 2023 Water Conference. Along with, of course, our colleagues from UN Water, the Technical Advisory Unit. As you know, the dates of the conference are 22nd through 24th March 2023. And the 25th October meeting is a mandated one, which will be convened by the President of the General Assembly. And one of the key objectives of this 25th October meeting is the finalization of the themes of the 5 interactive dialogues that provides the main official program of this conference. Now, you would have, I hope, already visited the website that we have for this conference. We would like to add that we have the advanced unedited version of a background note, which was drafted by the conference, by the Secretary General, and that has proposals on the 5 themes of the interactive dialogues. Now, I shall stop here because I would like to, keep this session interactive, and we should try to answer as many questions as possible from the floor. But please, I would request you to keep your microphones muted. And when you have a question after the next speaker, please raise your hands. Use the raise hand function so that we can proceed smoothly. And please also note that we are recording this session. That said, I shall now give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Johannes Kuhlmann, from the Office of the President of the General Assembly. Johannes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Madhu. Welcome everybody in this call that should clarify really the last details and your questions on what's going to happen on Tuesday next week. I'm here with the whole team. You can't see them all from the PGA office. We're all supporting the event to make sure that it will be smooth for you and that we will have the outcome that we desire to have. And Madhu has already alluded to what we think is our primary goal, which is as per the resolution that mandates us to finalize the interactive dialogues. So the interactive dialogues, just again for all the members who are connected today, are the frames in the thematic discussions that we will have in March next year. Those will set basically the frameworks of the 5, so to say, containers that will discuss the content of the water conference. They have been proposed by the co-hosts of the conference based on a very transparent stakeholder consultation. All that is online on the conference website, and our office is now tasked to do the meeting to finalize the proposed 5 interactive dialogue themes. And the interactive dialogues are already proposed as to relate to the key indicators of the SDG 6. So all SDG 6 discussions should really be covered by the 5 indicators. And we are pretty confident, I think, that we can come to a good agreement on the 25th. We have prepared an agenda that I will explain in a minute, but I want to also relate very briefly to something that we are doing, because our slogan or our motto for this GA77 is solutions through solidarity, science, and sustainability. So the science part and the solidarity part are really important for us, and therefore we have a stakeholder consultation on the 24th that should already give us some indications on how we can fill the interactive dialogue themes from October this year to March next year, but also have proposals on the table in March next year on the game changers that are part of the water action agenda. So the outcome of the 23 conference again is the water action agenda plus an outcome document. And for the water action agenda, we are aspiring to have groups of countries or also private sector players, civil society players who present game changers. But the game changers are not the main mandate of the 25th. So that will be discussed on the 24th, and we will give a feedback on the 25th. Now let me maybe go through the agenda on the 25th briefly. We will start at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. In conference room 4. And we will have about an hour-long introduction session where some high-level dignitaries will speak. The President of the General Assembly will preside this meeting, and he has promised me to stay the whole day. He has actually the 2 days penciled into his calendar, 24 and 25, to lead the discussions. And I think that's very good for us because he's not only a very experienced moderator, but he's of course also very experienced in the substance of the topic. So having him moderating this session will, I think, contribute to a smooth discussion and to making sure that all your comments are properly taken into account. The opening will also contain, or directly after the opening, we will have a 20-minute feedback from the stakeholders, where the stakeholders already propose how the interactive dialogues could be fed with game changers. This is not supposed to influence the discussion on the topics of the game changers, but it is really in support of the game changers so that members are reassured that all the stakeholders have already good ideas for the interactive dialogue. So what we want to do is we want to make sure the interactive dialogues cover all the bandwidth of your topics that you think are important, and that they are structured in a way that they can accommodate these game changers. We aspire to have most of the time on the 25th for the interaction that you should have on this, on the interactive dialogues. So we will open the floor at 11:05, I hope, for member discussion on interactive dialogues. We have heard through groups of the Friends meetings that have taken place, but also some bilaterals that the co-hosts have had and we have had, that there are really exchanges needed on the interactive dialogues, and we are quite confident that we can really go through that in a cooperative spirit until lunchtime. And then we will use the lunchtime from 1 to 3 to make sure that we can have, if needed, discussions to iron out the last bits and details of the interactive dialogue, and then hopefully finalize the interactive dialogues right after lunch. And then there will be a possibility for an hour-long discussion, or a bit more than an hour, on what is the content of the interactive dialogues. So that is something that the President of the General Assembly was very keen on. He said we have 2 targets for the 25th. One, our first and of course most important, because mandated target, is to agree on the interactive dialogues. And the second target that he would like, or objective that he would like to see happening on the 25th, is to have with all of you from your capitals, from your missions here, with experts, with leaders, already a discussion on what could be the starting points for the game changers, what could be possibilities that we can further refine in the coming months, so that in March next year we don't start thinking, but that in March next year we can actually already announce what needs to be done after March. Then we will have a presentation on outstanding organizational matters that will be done by DESA, and we will have remarks by the co-host and then the wrap-up of the President of the General Assembly. So this is a little bit the rundown of the 25th, where again we have two main targets or topics. One is the finalization and agreement on the topics of the interactive dialogues, and two is also on those game changers for the water action agenda. So the water action agenda, of course, is not a mandated outcome of the conference next year, but it is the system or the scheme how we will follow up with commitments on the conference, because what we have all learned from the last conference or what we have seen, I have to smile because the last conference was in 1977 and probably some of us don't remember that conference so well. But what we collectively have learned is that in La Plata 1977, in the water conference, we had a very good outcome, but we had no process to follow up on that outcome. So the water action agenda shall be our scheme and process how we can follow up from the 23 conference, where the mandated outcome is a summary document. So there will be no negotiated outcome, but there will be a summary document and the water action agenda. So I think that shall be my introduction now. I hope Madhu will moderate this session, and I am really happy to answer as many questions as I can. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Johannes. And before I give the floor, I would just like to give you a few updates on what's going to happen after the prep meeting. Hopefully, once we have finalized the themes, the Conference Secretary General will send out a letter to all member states saying that these are the final themes, and then, of course, asking for inputs, contributions to the themes from all member states, of course, all stakeholders, as well as UN system entities, because we want these interactive dialogues or the content behind the interactive dialogues to be a very inclusive process. We want everybody's views on it, because as you know, per mandate, we have to draft the 5 concept notes based on which there will be the thematic dialogues at the conference itself. And for that, the Conference Secretary General, which is USG Lee of DESA, will send out this request to member states with, of course, a deadline, which we will receive. And then with your consent, we will post this on the conference website. In addition, there will be a couple of more asks. We will require nominations of panelists, any experts that you know who would serve well under these themes. And of course, we will also make a call for voluntary commitments, which will provide the solid basis for the water action agenda as mentioned by Johannes. So this will be the process going forward. And of course, we will work very closely with co-hosts to then develop these interactive panels for the conference itself. And of course, as you know, per the modalities resolution, there will also be a call for co-chairing these interactive dialogues to member states. And again, per the modalities resolution, we will have one developed country and one developing country co-chairing each interactive dialogue. In addition, of course, close attention will be paid to regional diversity, gender balance, and of course, stakeholder participation. So with that update, I will stop here and I will open the floor for questions. And of course, with us, we also have our colleagues from Netherlands and Tajikistan. From the Netherlands, we have Ms. Julia Munsters, and from Tajikistan, we have Ms. Tahmina Kasanova. I'll stop here, and of course, the floor is yours. Participants, please again use the raise hand functions so that we can see who's asking questions. I see Sylvain Gain and Andrew John Roby. Go ahead, please, Sylvian. Sylvian has shown up first on my screen. So, Sylvian, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the briefing and the documents that were shared yesterday. This is very timely. I have 4 questions, so please bear with me. First of all, on the finalization of the theme, thanks a lot, Johannes, for bringing some details. So if we understand well, there could be some small group discussions or some format of discussion during lunchtime. And then if there are changes to the proposed on the themes, we will be informed at 3 o'clock for immediate sort of discussion and adoption. So if you could confirm this and also confirm the procedure for the adoption of those themes then at 3. The second question is on the integrated ideas for transformative game changers and on the exchange of views. Will there be a document to support this discussion, or is the idea to have initial proposals coming from member states and then some reactions to what the stakeholders would report in the morning? Third point is not really a question. We wanted to point out that obviously we're very much involved in negotiations in committee at the moment, especially in second committee for most of the colleagues concerned with the conference. And I realize this is not your decision and probably that of the Bureau, but we have a number of informal consultations planned for Tuesday afternoon, which makes it very difficult for small missions in particular to cover the preparatory meeting. And considering that it's a mandated event, we were wondering if there has been coordination, or if there could be coordination so that maybe this informal consultation would be postponed, or that at least we maximize the participation of colleagues in the prep meeting. And finally, I had a question on the informal working groups. Thanks a lot for already sharing some information. That's very useful. And if you could let us, tell us a bit more on how often would those group meet, when that would start, and also if you could confirm that both member states and stakeholders will participate in this work. So yeah, thank you very much, and we look forward to the meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you for that. Julia, should I go ahead and answer some of these questions? On the informal preparatory working groups, as you know, these are parliamentary documents that we are drafting. The concept papers are parliamentary documents. And the informal preparatory working groups have a very specific task, that is to draft these concept papers. So we will take on board the Conference Secretary General will take on board all the suggestions that we've received from member states and then draft the concept papers. But as such, member states are not going to be involved in these meetings of these IPWGs, because this is really the Secretary General's responsibility. And as you know, parliamentary documents are not really negotiated. But we will take into consideration not just member states' inputs, but UN system inputs, as well as all stakeholder inputs. And if I may add, based on the proposed themes from the co-hosts, which, as you know, went through a lot of intense discussions, UNDESA has already had an online global consultation with stakeholders, and that report is already launched today. So please go and visit the website so that you can see the ideas coming out from the stakeholders. As the Secretariat, may I also add that, the themes really are to be decided by the Secretariat, again, Conference Secretary General, in consultation with the co-hosts. So as such, there aren't going to be really informal negotiations like we have for resolutions again. Because a lot of intense discussions have already been had during these various groups of friends meetings, various webinars, various summit level and high level events that have already happened prior to the 25th of October meeting. So these are some of the answers that I have to your questions, and I don't know if either Julia or Tahmina want to add to this, but if yes, then please go ahead. If not, we can move on to the next person who has asked the question. Thank you.
I can respond quickly, specifically to the question regarding if there would be any sort of discussions going on during lunch in smaller groups about the themes. Again, as Madhu said, we've already had extensive consultations with member states and stakeholders regarding the themes. So there will be no smaller group discussions happening in the room. What will likely happen is that, of course, we will listen to the discussion and the points raised by member states. We've already done so previously. And then likely the teams will be finalized on the 25th itself, either as proposed currently or with minor tweaks, but no substantial large tweaks. So that's the process that has been foreseen. And then I believe there was also a question that was specifically about the game changers. So maybe Johannes can also elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, I can confirm what Julia has just said. I mean, it is, of course, the members who decide about the interactive dialogue. So the proposal is out on the table. It is a very good proposal. It covers, I think, almost everything that we need, but it is very clear, and it is the prerogative of the UN member states to finalize the interactive dialogues on the 25th. So we think we are almost there. I have had a lot of good positive feedback. I think my colleagues from the Tajik and from the Dutch missions as well. And when I said that we want to finalize really the agreement on the interactive dialogues after lunch, that was not meant to, oh, let's discuss for 2 hours after, throughout the lunch, what we could still induce as changes. I really hope that we will have a very good discussion, transparent, open, and as always, aptly moderated by our President of the General Assembly before lunch. So I think we will get there. We will just maybe, as Julia has said, have to use lunchtime to adapt the very final version, hopefully, of the interactive dialogues to what the members are requesting and discussing. So it's not foreseen to have an extra go on drafting text during lunch, but on really discussing this beforehand, and then after lunch, having already a proposal by the PGA on how the final interactive dialogues would look like. On the game changers, what is the hope of the President of the General Assembly is that after we have finalized the interactive dialogues, the members will exchange already some views and will discuss what is what as a maybe also in reaction to what happens on the 24th in the stakeholder dialogue. And now it is very clear that members will not have enough time to react and consult this in capital to have a official position on what stakeholders discuss and propose on the 24th. But I think it is very important that we make clear that the interactive dialogues are best used after March 2023, or are of most use if we have this process that I mentioned earlier that we didn't have after La Plata. And the water action agenda is the key element for this, where the game changers are the key parts of the water action agenda. So this is the commitment that the national actors bring, that other groups of countries can bring, or that we maybe need at the regional and global level. And I think it is clear that there will be no agreement on game changers on the 25th. That is asking too much of members. But I think on the 25th, members should be given the possibility to discuss from their point of view what game changers could and should look like. And we will, of course, have an outcome document of the 25th, where we can also summarize this discussion and use that as a starting point for the process that we will need, that will surely be led by the co-hosts of the conference, but also everybody else who voluntarily wants to co-design those game changers that we need for the 23 conference between October and March. So sorry for being a bit lengthy there. Floor is back to you, Madhu.
Thank you, Johannes. I would now like to give the floor to Andrew.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, Andy Roby. I'm from UK, FCDO. I know some of you already. Great to see some familiar faces, Johannes. No, I had a couple of questions, one of which I see my Vietnamese friends have asked already, the sort of the process for selecting co-chairs for the 5 different themes. We have some interest as the UK in possibly helping out with that. And secondly, Johannes, that was really useful what you said about the sort of process ahead. But I mean, the water action agenda, I'd like to understand a little bit more how you see that working. I understood, at least from the meeting in Dushanbe, that there would be some sort of filtering process going on, and then a selection process. And is that yet to be designed and defined? Is that for us to do next week? Or is that, have you already got some ideas as to how to do that? Those are my 2 questions. Thanks.
I don't know, Andy, you have addressed this to me. I think partially this is also for the co-hosts to answer. On the process for co-facilitating the interactive dialogues, there will be the information session at 5 o'clock, where DESA will explain that to all the member states on the 25th. So we have a good practice in the UN always to come to a conclusion where we have a regional balance and where we have a global involvement in making sure that the co-facilitation is according to our expectations and standards. And I think it's very good that the UK be interested. I know that the co-facilitators will be elected in the conference, that is in the resolution that mandates the conference. So of course there will be discussions beforehand with DESA and the co-hosts on this, and this is a process that we will hopefully finalize relatively quickly, but this is not my mandate or my my business, but it is clear that we need to work as of the end of the preparatory meeting to really, when we have finalized the interactive dialogues, to make sure that those are organized for the 23rd and supported by the water action agenda. And on that water action agenda question that you had there, the water action agenda is really the mechanism, and I don't think there will be a filtering or there's no good and bad. This is a voluntary platform for commitments, and there will be small scale commitments. I could say I'm going to waste no more water in my toilet. That could be a commitment for the water action agenda. But of course, that will make only a partial impact to the water crisis at the global scale. So we are looking there really at commitments that are local, that drive sustainable development at the local level through national institutional commitments to regional and global commitments, where we really need to have people saying, okay, well, we want to work together in a river basin to leverage the co-benefits of adaptation and mitigation, and to have deltas managed in a way that it is beneficial for the whole of the river basin, where it's on the information system that we need. Those are all in the pipeline game changers that have been prepared and discussed in the past year or years. There will surely be something on water quality, on capacity development, and we need to make sure that the small scale commitments can work and that the large scale or these game change commitments are really well thought through and have, after the 23 conference, an action plan, a community that supports them, and so forth. So it is to create now already, yeah, the bones and muscles to implement the water action agenda after the 23 conference. I hope that answers your questions more or less, Andy.
Maybe a little bit to elaborate on the answers that Johannes just provided. First, to start off with the co-chairing process, because I think it's important, and Madhu will probably do so more in detail on the 25th, but to distinguish the co-chairs and the vice presidents, which are two separate processes. So we will have the co-chairs, like Madhu just said, two per interactive dialogue, one from a developed and one from a developing country. The selection of those co-chairs will likely happen by the end of January, and then we will have the vice presidents of the conference, and those will be selected, as Johannes just mentioned, during the conference itself. So just wanted to clarify there. And then also in terms of the water action agenda, I would like to refer all to the operations document that has been circulated. We will actually circulate a most recent version also on the basis of the comments that were received by member states. And this goes into a little bit more detail on the inner workings of the water action agenda, also the role of potentially the UN system and UN Water and UN DESA in sort of when those commitments come in, at least making sure that they are actually smart, etc., that they have financial resources available, etc. So referring you to the operations document for a bit more detail on that, and happy to have a further discussion.
Thank you, Julia. And if I may add a little bit to choosing of co-chairs, because Vietnam has written, what if there are more than 2 countries interested in an ID? And based on our experience with the Ocean Conference, it's not going to be 2 countries. It'll probably be 10 countries interested in the same interactive dialogue. So as we are saying, regional diversity, regional balance, gender balance, and also, you know, co-hosts have this to be a conference at a very high level. They want high level participation. So if there is a minister of, say, agriculture who you can bring, then of course, you know, they are going to be given priority. If there is a CEO of a company or a head of an entity, of course they are going to be given priority because they are the ones who are responsible for making the ultimate decisions in their relevant entities. They are the ones who can sort of push the envelope, if you will. So that's how we had worked during the Ocean Conference, and I suspect we'll do the same. In our ask when we help out the co-hosts to nominate the co-chairs, we will say rank in order of priority, which ID do you really want to co-chair? And if a ranking can be given from member states, that would be very helpful to co-chairs and the Secretariat to work together and decide on co-chairing of these interactive dialogues. So I'll stop here, and I now have somebody whose initials are AA on my screen. So if you could please introduce yourself, that would be great. I see your hand as well on my screen. Thank you. AA, yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm Alara from the Turkish mission, and thank you very much for organizing this meeting, because we also have a lot of questions and some has been answered, and we would like to have a couple of more questions, if okay. If I'm repeating, please, if it has already been said, you don't have to answer, but some are procedural. Some are content-wise. My first question will be about the 24th of meeting for stakeholders. Our member states can participate to it or not? It's not we are interested to participate, but we would like to know if we can participate or not. That's just a procedural question. Secondly, for 25th, for interactive dialogue part of the meeting between 11 to 1 o'clock. Do we supposed to register as well? But it says interactive, so it will be just pressing the speaker button, and that will work that way. Yeah, this is the second procedural question. And third one, we compared the previous agenda with this agenda. In the previous agenda, it was about we are also supposed to present our proposals for co-chairs and moderators and so on as well. I think in this agenda it is changed, so we are not expected to announce it in this meeting or not. So what exactly we're supposed to do at 5 o'clock session of the meeting then? Are we going to announce it, or are we just going to put our interest, because Turkey is also interested to present proposals on that as well. But if there is no need, we can do it at a later stage, because from UN Water, I heard that there will be another letter that will come from the Secretariat, and then we are maybe supposed to react onto that letter and can give feedback. I fully agree with the EU about 25th. There is ongoing 2C negotiations. So I don't know how we're going to manage it, because the second part of the meeting is important, but we have ongoing negotiations. If there has been given some thought on that, maybe not on the PJ side, but I don't know how to deal with that. That's the question mark, big question mark. And another issue is about the water action agenda. In fact, water action agenda is, in a way, we see that as it was in the resolution that we are expected to present our voluntary commitment. So in that sense, it is one of the outcomes as well. But I think what is not outcome is the way forward that is integrated in the water action agenda. So how we're going to do it together with member states and the co-hosts to elaborate that one. Are we going to have extra meetings? Because as the meeting so far, the preparation has been so good. It was so transparent, so we could contribute to that process. And we have strong feelings that if our chairs will continue to be as transparent as possible. But how we're going to feel into that water action agenda content-wise, because then it is presented as an outcome document. So we want to be contributing to it. Voluntary contributions are commitments are separate. Because it's up to member states, but follow-up is different. So how we're going to deal with this aspect of the water action agenda, because we have also sent some comments too. We could be able to also discuss that element too with co-chairs and with wider membership. So far I have these questions, but I might have very many, but so far like that. Thank you so much.
So may I start with the procedural ones, please? So yes, all participants should press the button on their consoles during the interactive dialogues. There is no inscription or any of that required. And also for co-chairing of the interactive dialogues, some member states might be even ready on the 25th to offer their nominations. But others are not. Therefore, we will send out a letter to all member states so that they can give us their nominations in writing and recognize that we are not just asking about co-chairing and interactive dialogue. We're also going to ask your opinion about panelists, moderators, if you have some good moderators in mind. And of course, we want you to rank which interactive dialogues you would like to do in what order, so that then we can look at the demand and supply, if you will, so that we can put together some really good, inclusive and expert panels together. So these are the two questions that I could answer, and perhaps co-hosts can talk a little bit about the water action agenda. Thank you.
I can elaborate a little bit, or Mina, do you want to come in? Otherwise, I will elaborate.
No, please go ahead.
Yes, just a bit about the follow-up process. I again want to underline here that, of course, the water action agenda is just simply providing a platform for all these voluntary commitments to come in. And that also relates to the follow-up process for the water action agenda. So, we're trying to see how we can connect some UN agencies and member states, etc., to these different follow-up processes, leveraging the existing structures. But all of that will be done on a voluntary basis. And the member states that are submitting commitments or stakeholders, etc., we will rely heavily on self-reporting, and otherwise it will also be voluntary, the follow-up mechanism. So I just want to underline in that sense, it will not be a negotiated outcome document. It will not be an outcome document. It is just a platform provided for voluntary commitments, and we will provide, or we will aim to provide, sort of follow-up structures for those parties interested, member states or stakeholders. But none of that will be mandatory. So just underlining that part. And we will, of course, continue to have different expert briefings to discuss the water action agenda. We have included some of the written comments that were submitted about the water action agenda. We will circulate a new operations document shortly. But we will continue to have a transparent process with the member states to further evolve this. So thank you.
Yes, just maybe 2 words just to add to Julia's comments that this is new document, this water action agenda, this is new platform, but we're trying to work on it together with all member states. Therefore, we are continuing to organize these expert level meetings, also at PR's level, to collect your suggestions, your inputs, and to make it the platform for all of us, because it's taken into account that we don't have negotiated document, and therefore it's very important to have one platform to follow up the outcomes of 2023 water conference. Thank you.
Also, if I may add, there is already a platform in place where you can register your voluntary commitments. So please, I know that many member states will come to the conference with their commitments, but if you already have some pledges in mind, please don't hesitate to put them already on the platform that has already been created and is linked to the website of the water conference. And this is also another thing to bear in mind if a country wishes to co-chair. If you are bringing in a big pledge or commitment, perhaps that would be a way to, get yourself to co-chair an interactive dialogue. You want to pledge 1 billion to water management, and yes, exactly, we are so excited. So you will get sorry, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say these things, but you get the drift. In terms of, Turkey asked if member states can speak on the 24th. I think Johannes is better placed to talk about that, but I think 24th is more to give the space to stakeholders. Of course, both sessions are being webcast so that you can definitely listen in. But Johannes, I don't know if you have something more to say on the 24th of October event.
Fourth, it's a stakeholder consultation, and consult stakeholders. It doesn't mean that the PGA or I consult the stakeholders. It is really a discussion that we want to have as broad as possible. So the more member states are in the meeting on the 24th, and I hear all the negotiations are ongoing and small missions are busy anyway, but more members are in this discussion on the 24th, where we will have roundtables on the accelerators of the GAF, the Global Acceleration Framework for SDG 6, that can then be projected into the interactive dialogues, the better it is, I think. So we don't want to have separated processes. We want to have a process where stakeholders develop ideas for game changers that can help concretizing the interactive dialogues in next year's conference. So the more member states are in the meeting on the 24th and discuss with stakeholders, the better it will be in our point of view. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Johannes and Julia. I think time is running out. I'd like to therefore give the floor to Sophie. You have had your hand raised for some time, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for holding this briefing today. I know we're running out of time and we're all busy with community season, so I'll be brief. My name is Sophie Sandström. I'm from the Permanent Mission of Finland. And just to add, of course, I fully align myself with what the EU asked earlier. I have a few additional questions to ask. First of all, just a point on the kind of our expectations for the process on the 25th with regards to the themes, is that we do expect that process to follow what we agreed in the modalities resolution. Just looking specifically at paragraph 9b and the paragraph related to the meeting hosted by the PGA, that the proposals for the themes will be prepared by the SG of the conference in consultation with member states and then finalized at the meeting held by the PG. So we definitely, as a member state, we do not expect any form of negotiation or adoption by member states at the meeting on Tuesday. That's not kind of what we agreed in the modalities. So that is not our expectation either. I then have just two questions going forward from the prep meeting. Just a question to clarify. So do I understand it correctly that member states are not expected to take part in the working groups? And if so, could we perhaps hear the rationale why this is not the case? We'd of course be very interested in participating in those working groups, as has been the process with other similar meetings who have had preparatory working groups. And then the second, just also to hear kind of the rationale behind why the co-chairs will not have a role in the working groups, will not have a role in the preparatory process. Just looking at, for instance, the energy, the high-level dialogue on energy, where Finland was a co-chair in one of the dialogues, and we also then chaired the working group and had a part of that preparatory process. And I'm just wondering whether there is a risk that member states will not be interested in participating at a higher political level as co-chairs and being candidates for co-chairs if that doesn't give us a role in the preparatory process as well, because that's normally how we sell this to the capital, is not just that the high-level person will chair the actual dialogue, but that we will also have a key role in the preparatory process. And that's usually important when a country considers putting forward its candidacy for co-chairmanship. Thank you.
So I can speak to the last question. So the high-level energy dialogues are a little bit different. This is a UN conference, and the concept papers are parliamentary documents. So the IPWGs have a very specific role. It's the drafting of the concept papers. Now, if the co-chairs are not yet determined by January, we will not, and if they are to have a role in drafting the concept papers, we will not have the concept papers, which have to be finished, done, processed, and translated into the 5 UN languages by end of December, actually. So the submission of these concept papers have very tight deadlines. And then, on the other hand, since these are parliamentary documents, these are not negotiating. This is not an area for negotiation. The way the Secretariat will and the co-hosts will involve member states is by asking them to give their contributions. And to be very honest, we have already started receiving actually nominations or volunteers for co-chairing certain dialogues. The Secretariat has already started receiving such interest, and so the interest is already there among member states. Co-chairs of these countries will bring their own perspective to the interactive dialogue, if you will, but the preparatory working groups have a very specific task to be finished by end of December, latest by early January. So that's the rationale. The high-level energy dialogues is a different animal, if you will. So, I'll stop here regarding those 2 points raised by Sophie. I'm not sure if Johannes or the co-hosts wish to intervene at this point. I see Yoram. Yoram.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Yoram Morad. I am the Israeli Special Envoy for International Water Affairs. And I have a small question. To begin with, really, we have to congratulate you all for the wonderful work you're doing consistently. And we're very thrilled regarding the action plan. My question is whether there is any kind of more specific guideline or maybe a kind of strategic plan like the UN has in several issues regarding the expected activity in the field of water, so that we'll be able to aim much better than just throwing ideas regarding our activity regarding water in developing countries, for example, which we have a lot, but to be more precise, more action-oriented, as you try us all to be, and working in order to add our part to the bigger strategic plan that you are planning, if you have one. Thank you.
Perhaps co-hosts would like to come in here. The Secretariat will be, of course, guided by co-hosts and member states on the way forward for the water action agenda. For now, as I said earlier, please put in your, your commitments in the platform provided. But please go ahead if Julia or Tahmina or Johannes want to say something on this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I can maybe, because I also saw in the chat that the Brazilian delegate had supported what our Turkish colleague had said, and Sophie alluded to it, and now Joran. So I think it is clear that, again, the water action agenda will have a, so to say, a canvas where all the commitments are registered and can be monitored, and that is our SDG 6 platform hosted by DESA, and UN Water will support that. And then we will have to develop, starting, I think, right after the October meeting, but going through the 23 meeting for those game changers who are more, say, regional and global in nature. We will have to agree on an action plan, maybe on a finance plan, and on what is the community, what is the, I sometimes use the word mandate, but I know that in the UN mandate is a very legalistic term, but you need the right players within game changers to make them effective. And these players in the game changers that are transformative and, so to say, above a national level, I think those communities need to find themselves. They will be supported by UN Water, and certainly there will be maybe also a chance to bring that to the Sustainable Summit, to the SDG Summit in September next year. And we will need to create, so to say, I don't know, I would say a mechanism or a process or a structure for these game changers so that they can be followed up effectively. And that should be bottom up. That should be the communities that want to drive and host and organize these game changers. They should, of course, also in principle agree on how this should be done. So I don't think anything of it can be prescriptive, but of course, those communities that work together in the water action agenda beyond a small scale or a national or local commitment, those actors will need to come together to decide how that can be done. It will be supported by UN Water, but it is not decided by the conference or so how that works. There is no mandate for the conference to decide on a process. It's a voluntary thing. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you for that, Johannes. I do not see any more hands raised. So if all is clear at this point, then perhaps it's time to close. I wonder if our co-host would like to say a few words.
Tahmina, would you like to say a few closing words? Or
Yes, just wanted one more time to thank you, to thank all member states for their contribution, for their involvement in this process, and thank you very much for your support. And we are very much looking forward to have success on PrEP meeting and also on 2023 Water Conference. Thank you very much. Please, Julia.
no, I don't have anything to add. Thank you all for participating today, and we look forward to seeing you on the 25th.
Johannes, perhaps you.
No,
Right, so-
same from my side. I'm just excited to have a lot of discussions and a good outcome on the 24th and 25th. So I am excited. I think we have a super good topic. We have a large number of people who have registered for the 24th, and the 25th is really the event where we set the path for the water conference, and then the water conference next year will be a one of the litmus tests for the Sustainable Development Summit that we will have later the year. So we have a super exciting time, and I am glad to participate. Thanks.
Thank you, Johannes and Tahmina. And I would also like to thank member states, because we have received immense cooperation from member states to the Secretariat, especially when we requested for contributions on themes and so on and so forth. Next week will be a very busy one, but going forward, we get even more busier when we will request your contributions, substantive contributions to the concept papers. And of course, this really kickstarts the process towards the conference. And of course, while we have the SDG Summit in 2023, let's not forget that there will be an in-depth review of SDG 6 at the HLPF in July in 2023. So this, our water conference will have an important contribution to that as well. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon. And with that, I think, Johannes, we can close this meeting. Thank you all.